Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Resilient Podcast. I am your host, Rob Aurelius. And today I want to talk about something every single one of us has experienced: expectations. And when it comes to expectations, we all create pictures in our mind of how life is supposed to unfold, right? We picture the dream job, the dream opportunity, the perfect relationship, the perfect outcome. But what happens when reality doesn't match the dream? That's a question we ask, right? And that's exactly what this past month has taught me. Um, if there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that resilience isn't just about surviving difficult moments. It's about learning to appreciate the unexpected chapters that life writes for us. So today's episode is called When Reality Doesn't Match the Dream. And, today is the last day of the month, July 31st. It's been such a busy month of July for me, mainly because it's summertime, mainly because there's just been a lot of transitioning, a lot of stuff that's happened, things that were supposed to happen and didn't happen, things that were happening that stopped happening. Um, but overall, I can't really complain because earlier this month, um, Diego and I, we went on this great trip out to Jersey. It was actually at Nostalgia Con, which was earlier this month, and something cool happened. And for those of you who follow me on social media, you probably realized that Diego and I met John Cena. And, it was such a beautiful moment for us because since last year, when we were getting ready for John Cena's farewell tour, Diego had said to me, "Hey, Rob, we have to find the opportunity this year." And this is 2025. He said, "We have to find the opportunity this year to be able to meet with John Cena and take a picture with him." And a lot of opportunities came last year. John Cena's last WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas. John Cena defeated Cody Rhodes for the Undisputed Championship. And after that, he had a meet and greet. And Diego wasn't in Vegas because Diego went to Colombia at that time. And then every time that there was a meet and greet and opportunity, Diego and I just weren't able to attend these meet and greet opportunities. And then I believe he had a meet and greet opportunity at a Fanatics Fest. And I ended up not going to the meet and greet at Fanatics Fest because unfortunately Diego was not available again. Diego was, I guess, again, he was in Colombia. So every single time that Diego and I planned to meet with John Cena, he wasn't available or I wasn't available. So at towards the end of last year, when obviously his last match came in Washington D.C., where he fought Gunther, and Gunther defeated him for Cena to end his career. Diego, was saying like, "Listen, we didn't get a chance to meet John Cena this year, and hopefully we can meet him in the near future." And that's when I wrote that letter to him on the Resilience Tribune. And you can check out all the articles that are part of the Resilience Tribune. There's actually a story that came out a few days ago that I wrote for the Resilience Tribune, just to kind of touch base with everything that I'm discussing right now in this episode, like the whole when reality doesn't match the dream. I came out with an article a few days ago, which is available right here on the Resilience Tribune website. This is the link right here. And in December, about 2 weeks after John Cena's retirement, I wrote a letter to John Cena on the Resilience Tribune. And I was able to, at NostalgiaCon, give the letter to John Cena. And for those of you that follow me on social media, you'll be able to see that video on my personal pages, on my Instagram, my Twitter, my Facebook. You'll be able to see that video where I hand over the letter to John Cena. John Cena says that he looks forward to reading it. And I hope he did. And, it was just a letter thanking him for his remarkable career, for, the 20 plus years that he gave us and everything that he did. And the whole, mantra of never giving up, hustle, loyalty, and respect. And speaking about that, normally I wear my hat, my hustle, loyalty, respect hat, which I've been wearing for a lot of the episodes since Cena's retirement. And I'm not wearing it today because I wanted to share with all of you that are watching on YouTube right now. This is the hat that I usually wear. And as you can see, there's something special on there, and that's John Cena's autograph. So that Saturday in NostalgiaCon, when I met with him and I gave him the letter, I gave him this hat so he could be able to sign it for me. So there is his autograph. And the hat, of course, says never give up in the back. And it says hustle, loyalty, and respect. And I've been using this hat, to honor Cena's career, since it's almost about to be a year, right? Like it's already, like tomorrow's August 1st, right? And next thing you know, this year's over, and it will be in December, and it will be like December 13th, which will make a year since John Cena retired. But this hat, since he signed it, this is the last time that this hat will actually be out in like the open. This hat will be immediately um inside of a case, and just to make sure this autograph stays there for as long as it can. And I plan to not wear this hat anymore. I'm going to be getting a replacement hat. And once I get the replacement hat, I'll be wearing that hat moving forward. But this one, unless it's like a special occasion, unless I see John Cena again, I will be wearing this hat for him. But, there's his autograph, John Cena. So it was one of the good things that happened this month. And, for every bad thing that happens, sometimes something good happens, right? So life is always about balance. There's always going to be some good moments. There's always going to be some bad moments. So let's talk about um, the actual topic that I wanted to talk to you all about today on this episode. And it's something that's been weighing on my mind, but at the same time, I have been doing everything I can to just continue to, move on in life, because that's becoming that a resilient person is, something affects you, but you move forward from it. You put it past you, and you literally continue to live your life. So, several months ago, um, I shared with you all that I had accepted an opportunity with Initio Parfums Privé. And I was genuinely excited because I believe that this would become the next chapter of my career. When the Madison Avenue boutique was announced for Initio, I was, asked to interview to be a candidate. And, I envisioned contributing to something special. When Danny had reached out to me and told me, hey, you'll be having two people reaching out to you, which was Rudy. Rudy is the regular account executive for the Northeast. And then he said, you're going to have Christopher reach out to you. Christopher is the boutique manager at Madison Avenue. Um, you know, like I said, I envision contributing to something special. And, I interviewed with Chris. Um, Everything seemed to have been well. Um, what's so weird is that um, after the interview, he actually went to one of the locations that I work at for Mind Games, and he had told people, "Hey, this boutique is opening up in like late July, maybe the beginning of August, the latest." And he's like, "We're looking for candidates. We're looking for people to interview." And everybody that was there literally said to him, "Hey, there's this guy, and his name is Rob, and he seems like he can be a good fit." And when I went back there for an event, everybody had said to me, "Hey, we brought your name up to someone. Do you know who Christopher is?" And I was like, "Christopher who?" And then they said, "Christopher, he's the new boutique manager of an e-show." And I was like, "Oh, I actually interviewed with Christopher." And they're like, "Yeah, well, we mentioned your name, we dropped your name, whatever." And I was like, "Wow, thank you, I appreciate that." And I reached out to him and I was like, "Hey, Chris, so it's such a small world. Like, you came to visit." And the funny thing is, he actually worked at that location as well too. This is an Neiman Marcus in New Jersey in Garden State Plaza. He had worked there at one point, and he went to go visit, I guess, to catch up with some of his former colleagues. And I was like, it's crazy that these people vouch for me. And he was like, it's weird because they were all saying that Rob, and I just didn't know they were talking about you. So overall, I had so many people vouching for me for this position. And you know Chris made it seem like, hey, listen, like it seems like it's meant to be because you have all the support from all these people. And overall, just people from the industry, from the 15 years that I have been part of this in the fragrance world, um more people vouch for me. And it seemed like I was gonna get that call from Chris, like, "Hey, listen, we're gonna move forward with you." And I was so excited about it because I literally said, "Listen, if I work for this boutique, I don't have to work at department stores anymore. I don't have to worry about doing events in different locations anymore. I would just be doing everything at this boutique. The events, the influencer stuff, everything will be done at this boutique, and it'll be in the city. I don't have to go to Long Island anymore. I don't have to go to Jersey anymore. I don't have to go to different places around New York, New Jersey state. I could just bring everything that I have, all the experience that I have, to this boutique." And you know um I even developed a strategy outlining ideas that I believed could have elevated the client experience and helped the boutique grow. And I shared it with Danny, who was the regional for Inicio, and I shared it with Chris. And unfortunately, um, things didn't unfold the way I hoped. And communication became so inconsistent with them. From the beginning. Because here's the thing: like, even though I was considered as a candidate for the boutique position, I was hired by Rudy just to be part of the team. And I actually worked 2 days. I actually worked the last 2 days of the month of June for Inicio. And, you know, like I said, communication became so inconsistent. Expectations weren't always clear. And over time, I realized something important. I realized, sometimes it's not enough to simply love a brand. You always have to understand that, you know, you also have to feel valued by the people leading it. And eventually, I made the difficult decision to resign. And it was actually the day that I met John Cena. I resigned from the company, um, not because I was angry, not because I wanted to burn bridges, but because I reached a point in my life where peace, professionalism, and mutual respect matter to me. They matter to me just as much as the opportunity. And sometimes walking away is also, an act of resilience. And when I did that, of course I had people that were like, hey, like, are you sure, you made the right decision? Even I thought briefly to myself, like, hey, like, am I really, 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 really gonna do this? Am I gonna move forward with this? And I did. And I created an email. I reached out to Rudy. I reached out to Danny, and I had received a email from Chris that they were not moving forward. And just the email itself that came from Chris to me came off like very chat GBT tailored. Like, I don't feel like it was a sincere email. I feel like it was just something to, you know, say, hey, like, listen, we're not moving forward with you. And I felt like that it just wasn't genuine. So what I ended up doing was I wrote a letter, an email. Actually, I wrote an email to Rudy and Danny, and I announced my resignation. And um, the sad part about it is that they never even bothered to respond to say, thank you for your services or whatever the case may be. I had reached out to Rudy and I said, I would like to have a conversation with you, and there was no response. Eventually, when I started going back to the places where people knew about the opportunity, everybody was like, "Hey, so what's going on? Did you hear back from Anisha?" And I mentioned the same thing to them, and I said to them, "Listen, the communication became so inconsistent. There was a lot of, um, observations that I made of how they are. I'm not here to badmouth this company. I'm not here to badmouth any individuals, period. Because everybody at the end of the day are human beings. But some companies, they will be so popular and they will be good brands, but the people sometimes running the show, the people sometimes, running the ship, like they just don't have those people skills. They don't have, that communication that is supposed to be had, you know, and that's just how they are. And there's nothing you could do about it. And over time, if all of that continues, eventually that, like people say, when shit hits the fan, um, the ship will sink. But I just hope that over time, because Anisha is a fairly new company. It's only been around for a decade. Um, Over time, hopefully, the people running the show, if it's the same people 10, 15, 20 years later, or whoever it is that's running it, they learn that it's not just customer experience that matters, but also the experience of the people working for the brands, the people representing the brands. You have to love what you do when it comes to work. And if you don't love what you do, that's a problem. And sometimes people don't love what they do because the company that they work for or the people they're representing don't show them any type of value back. So, yeah, and when I communicated to everyone, like, no, this is what happened, everybody was like, that's so weird. They made it seem like you were, their top choice. They made it seem like they were excited to explore this opportunity with you. And then they ended up just, moving forward another candidate. And there was a lot of factors that were added. Like, hey, do you think it could have been the pay you was asking for? Do you think? I'm like, it could be whatever it is. And I was like, and I honestly don't care. But I said, what's meant for you will not pass you. And we talked about it in the last episode 61. So I said, what's meant for you is not going to pass you. And that's just the way I feel about everything. So we're going to continue to talk about all these things. And, um, we're going to talk a little bit more about Nostalgicon. But um, before we go on a commercial break, I wanted to, uh, first and foremost, thank, um, one of our sponsors, Maddie Rock Coffee. Shout out to Maddie Rock. Maddie's birthday was actually the other day. Um, and, with Maddie Rock's Coffee, whether you're beginning your morning, preparing for your work day, or simply taking a moment to recharge, Maddie Rock's Coffee is committed to deliver premium coffee with exceptional flavor in every cup. And, when you visit their website right here on the screen, don't forget to use our code TRP10 at checkout to save 10% on your order. And, there's so much coffee you could get on that website. You could get regular coffee, you could get cold brew, you know, um, this coffee's phenomenal. And if you're a coffee lover, you should be drinking Maddie Rock's coffee. I'm telling you, you won't regret it. So right here on the screen is the website where you can place your order. And then right here on the side, this is our code, TRP10. And you save 10% automatically because you're listening or watching the Resilient Podcast. So, folks, we'll be right back and we'll continue this conversation. And I'll see you all soon. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 62 of the Resilient Podcast. Today we're talking about, pretty much expectations and all these other things. And, the interesting thing about life is that while one chapter was closing, another one was opening, right? So I mentioned to you guys that a few weekends ago, Diego and I traveled to Nostalgicon in New Jersey. And, for years, John Cena's message of never give up, which is right here on the hat that I mentioned to you guys earlier, right? See that big sign right there. For those that are watching on YouTube, never give up. It inspired millions of people, including me. And, I mentioned to you guys that I gave him the letter, and, it was December of last year. I wrote him that open letter, and, I printed that letter believing that somehow, someday, I'd hand him the letter personally. And that day finally came. And, we exchanged words. And, when we were exchanging words, he autographed the hat. And, most importantly, I was able to personally thank him for inspiring me during some of the most difficult seasons of my life. Most importantly, I was able to personally thank him for inspiring me during some of the most difficult seasons of my life. Moments like that reminded us why hope matters. Because sometimes faith looks like holding onto a dream long before it becomes a reality. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about reality. So, before the commercial break, I spoke to you guys about like what happened with an show. The fact that I had to resign. This was not in the cards for me this year to, work for someone briefly and then resign, or resign for anyone, period. Because, sometimes the jobs that I have, I love them. And I work those jobs for a reason. But, I had to make a decision where I needed to be resilient, where I needed to think about, okay, what's best for me? What's best for my mental health? What's best for, the future? And at the time, that's how I felt. So, I wanted to take a moment to focus on the cards of James. And, you know, in the cards of James, today we have a very special card that we're going to take out of the deck real quick. And here is today's card for everyone to see, for those that are watching on YouTube. And the card says, your potential is endless. That's the way you should feel. You should feel that your potential, there's no limits, there's no barriers, you know, it's endless because every day you can become better than you were the day before. You know, every day you can be a better version of yourself. You know, and every day that you have that goes by, it's a day of, you know, continuing, you know, your journey, the legacy you're building, whatever the case may be. And I just feel that those type of things you just don't take for granted. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, always remember that your potential is very important because eventually, not only will you see what your potential is, but others will see the potential as well too. And that's what truly, 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 truly matters. You know, I see my potential in so many things, and it's kind of like also like seeing your value as well too. And as long as you see your value and you know your value, you don't allow anyone or anything to devaluize you. So, you know, going back to the topic of, you know, nostalgia con and meeting John Cena, as if that wasn't enough, you know, that weekend, Diego and I also had the opportunity. Actually, no, it was following the following weekend. Sorry, the following weekend, Diego and I also had the opportunity to attend Saturday Night Main Event, which took place at Madison Square Garden, and you know, we were watching um, to close the show, Roman Reigns share the ring with the Knicks captain Jalen Brunson, the King of New York, right? Inside one of the world's most iconic arenas, you know, reminded me that, you know, sports and entertainment bring truly, truly bring people together. And, you know, then came another reminder through sports, you know, when, you know, Spain lifted, you know, the World Cup trophy. You know, congratulations to Spain. They did such a great job. Um, you know, they were hungry. They had, you know, all these young guys on the team. And, you know, I know people kept saying like, oh, you know, Messi and Argentina, you know, they're gonna succeed, they're gonna prevail. And then I had people that were like, listen, the underdog is this hungry team. This team that's so hungry, this team that is so ambitious, and they won. You know, they came, they saw, they conquered, and you know now Spain are the champions of, you know, the FIFA World Cup. So congratulations to them. Um, I'm very happy that they won, and it's a little sad because, you know, for a while, you know, the World Cup was, you know, FIFA in general was just kind of like distracting the world from a lot of the crazy things that's happening. Even especially when the Knicks won, like it was kind of like, you know, it was a good thing, but it was also a distraction from like half of the stuff that's going on in the world because a lot of people were happy that the Knicks won. But you know, it is what it is, and um, overall, I'm just happy that, you know, there was so much great happening. And one thing we have to understand is that championships don't happen overnight. You know, they're built through preparation, um, discipline, sacrifice, teamwork, and believing in something bigger than yourself, right? And that's true in sports. It's true in business, and it's true in life. The victories everyone celebrates are usually the results of years of unseen work. And, I think that that's, you know, what led the Knicks to become, NBA champions. That's what ultimately also led Spain to win the World Cup. And, you know, these type of things, we should be able to apply it to ourselves and apply it in our own lives. So I want to take a quick moment to thank another sponsor of ours, which is Nala Health. Um, Victor Melgar is doing great things with this company, with this brand. And, your health is your greatest investment, right? And, Nala Health is committed to helping individuals achieve wellness through a personalized, holistic approach to care. So, you know, I speak very proudly of Nala Health because Nala products have helped me a lot with insomnia. It's helped me a lot with, my anxiety and whatnot. And I really, truly hold Nala Health to a very high regard. So, when you visit their website, which is right here on the screen, nalahealth.com, remember to use the same code as always, TRP10, to receive 10% off of your entire order. And this is not just a one-time code, coupon code. This is a recurring coupon code every time you want to make a purchase. So, you know, make sure that, you enter that code at checkout, TRP10, to save 10% off. And they have such great products there. NalaHealth.com. Take a look, see it for yourself, and you thank me later. So, folks, I look forward to the month of August. And I know that in the last episode, episode 61, I mentioned to you guys that there was going to be a guest. But, because I got a little busy with a lot of things, I had to make some adjustments, and I was able to reach out to the guest that were supposed to be on this episode and told them that if it was okay, if we can, have our conversation in a future episode. And they said, absolutely. So hopefully sometime next month, I'll be able to have this guest on the show. And it's going to be a very great person that I came across through the power of social media. Great story. Someone who I believe, uh, symbolizes what true resilience is. So I look forward to that. I really do. But, as I reflect on this month of July, I realized something. I thought, that I had lost an opportunity, but maybe what I really gained was clarity. That's just how I feel. I feel that I gained unforgettable memories, new experiences, a deeper appreciation for the people who have stood beside me, and I'm very thankful for that. And another reminder that God's plan often looks different from our own, and reality didn't match the dream this time, but maybe reality became something even better. So that's pretty much what I'm going to leave you guys with for this episode. But, before we wrap up today's episode, I do have to thank our third sponsor, and it's our friends out at the You Good brand. And remember, I had Gabriel on the show a few episodes ago, and he gave me this nice stack of cards. And the beautiful thing is that I can also share with you all, and this is the first time that I'm actually sharing it with people. For those that are watching on YouTube, Gabriel sent me one of his official shirts from the website, from the You Good brand. So check this out for those that are watching on YouTube. So it's literally a shirt that says "You Good," and it's so thick. Like it's like this quality of the shirt is like amazing. I feel like it's gonna keep you warm. Um, and then in the back of the shirt, it literally says "Doing my best." And the good thing about it is that if you go on their website, which is right here on the screen, You Good brand. Um, Also, you save 10% for being part of the podcast, for subscribing to the podcast. So, you know, what I love about the You Good brand is that, they acknowledge that mental health matters, and checking in on one another can make a bigger difference than we realize. So when you visit their website, which is right here on the screen, you know, you save 10% with the code TRP10. And, it allows you to support your mental wellness journey while saving on your purchase. And I think it's a beautiful thing. So, what I like about the You Good brand is that it says real talk, real connection. So, like I did last time, I read a card to myself, and um, there's a question here that I'm looking at these cards, right? There's a question here that I found very interesting in today's card, and I want to share with you all. So today's card for the You Good brand literally asks, how do you honor those who've passed? And it's from Unseen Burdens, which is one of the categories from the card. How do you honor those who've passed? Beautiful question. Because guess what? One of the people that I honor who has passed is my grandmother. And, my grandmother's legacy is very important to me. I talk about it a lot. I've spoken to you guys a lot about my grandmother's story on this podcast. And she's part of the reason why this podcast exists, because my grandmother was one of the most resilient people that I've ever known. Probably the most resilient person I've ever known. And how I like to, honor those that passed, I like to, you know, do things that was part of their language, deliver their message, continue to further deliver their message, their agenda, their mission. And I think that's a beautiful way of honoring someone who passed. Um, One of the things that I personally appreciate is, like, for example, the WWE, right? This year's WrestleMania in Las Vegas, I didn't get a chance to attend this year's WrestleMania, but WrestleMania 42 happened in Vegas again. And over the last few months leading to WrestleMania, the WWE lost a lot of personnel. They lost a lot of people that worked for the company. And when CM Punk came out, um, night two, he had his match with Roman Reigns, right? And CM Punk was wearing a jacket that literally honored all those people that passed away. And I think it was one of the most beautiful things ever. You know, he walked to the ring with that jacket on, honoring Harley Race, which is one of his favorite wrestlers, and honoring people that were part of WWE, people that, were part of, like, everything that had to do with CM Punk's career. And I think it's a beautiful thing. And my question to you is, how do you honor those that passed? I always look forward to folks, reaching out to me after they watch these episodes or hear these episodes with their answers. So, for those that are watching and listening to this episode, share some feedback with me. Let me know how you personally like to honor those that pass. But folks, I do have some quick news to share with you all in regards to the Resilience Project, which is the documentary that was slated to come out at some point this year. I have an update for you guys. Um, the information is going to come out soon. There's going to be a post on social media, but this is going to be a very direct and, great update for those that are waiting, for the release date of this documentary. But when this information becomes public in the next few days, first week of August, the information will be there for you all to see. And I just wanted to share that update with you all. I don't want to give away too much information because then it makes no sense to actually have the post come out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to next month. I think next month is going to be very interesting. So, I want to, take this moment to thank you all for joining me for episode 62 of the Resilient Podcast. And my thing is, like, what I would like to say to you all is if you feel that today's episode encouraged you or reminded you to keep moving forward or helped you see your own journey a little different, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who may need this message today. So, this is all I have for all of you for episode 62. The next episode coming up is episode 63, which will come out in the second week of August. Um, I'll be able to talk to you guys about SummerSlam because it's at literally this weekend in Minnesota, and I won't be able to attend. But I have Diego and my friend Justin out there to do media coverage for ARCG Media, the ARCG WWE tour, and I'm thankful for that. Yeah, I'll be able to talk to you guys about SummerSlam and talk to you about other things as well too. But I truly appreciate you all tuning in today, and I really look forward to episode 63. So, folks, remember to always remain resilient, stay resilient, keep believing, and remember, just because reality doesn't match the dream, it doesn't mean it can't become something even greater. So that's the message I want to leave you all with. So remember, it's up to you to make a change, a positive change at that. So I'll see you all soon, and I look forward to the next episode. Until next time, peace.